guys, big breaking news coming out. Ukraine just fired something very powerful towards Russia. It says here Ukraine confirms the use of US long-range attacks on Russia after months of Pentagon restrictions. The last time, I think it was under Joe, it was last year, if I'm not mistaken. And at the same time, Russia responded by launching Orishnik. They fired Orishnik after that. So long-range attacks were fired towards Russia. We're going to see what's going on here, guys. Before I start, for those of you that want to send us letters, a prayer request, you can send it to me, US Santiago, or my wife, Jessica Santiago, at 3432 US Highway 19, number 2, Holiday, Florida, 34691. And for those of you that want to help and support the channel, we do have the Cash App link and the PayPal link in the comments box and also description box. Once again, thank you so much for your support. ATACs were fired. Very powerful. This is our stuff here, guys. It's being fired towards Russia. The question is, who pushed the button? Because you need satellites for this, and I don't think Ukraine has the satellites or capability to be firing these long range. Was it NATO? Or was it Donald? We're going to see what's going on here, guys. This is a bombshell news. At the same time, I have some updates about the power grid out there in Ukraine. I mean, people just plain darkness out there. There's no lights in certain areas. The power grid has been obliterated. And we're going to get to some of that news updates. Ukraine General Staff said on November 18 it had used U.S.-made attacks against military targets in Russia after months in which a Pentagon review process effectively blocked such strikes. The confirmation comes after months in which a U.S. Defense Department review process gave Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth authorities to block Ukraine's long-range strikes inside Russia with American missiles, effectively preventing the use of attacks against targets in the Bear Country since late spring. Now it says here the U.S. commander on August 21st said that Ukraine had no chance of winning if not permitted to strike Russia, and criticized former U.S. Commander Joe for not letting Kiev fight back, only defend. While this is the first ATAC strike confirmed by General Staff, it was widely reported that Ukraine first used ATACs on Russian territory for the first time on November 19, 2024, striking a Russian arsenal in Karachev, a town in western Russia. This was right after Donald won the election. So November 19, that's when U.S. gave the green light for Ukraine to fire the long range towards Russia. And then a few days later, Russia responded by dropping Orishnik. Orishnik is a very powerful missile. Very powerful missile. It says here you have Ukraine General Staff said the November 18 strike was a significant development that underscores Ukraine's unwavering commitment to its sovereignty. Now, despite the ongoing pressure of Russian offensive actions, the Ukrainians remain resilient, demonstrating determination and consistent resolve in defending their homeland. The use of long-range strike capabilities, including systems such as ATACs, will continue, it said in a statement. Now, further details of the strike were not provided at the time of publication. Ukrainian Telegram channel said that Russia's, let's skip that name there, resident reported hearing explosions in air defense due to a missile strike on a city. Reuters is also putting out this information here, guys. But it's not looking good. If they are firing long-range attacks, again, like I say, guys, this is, again, it's not going to force Russia to come to the round table and end the war. I think this is going to backfire. ATACs are U.S. supply ballistic missile that can fly up to 300 kilometers. Former U.S. leader Joe eased restriction on Ukraine use of ATAC in November 2024, allowing Kiev to launch them against military targets in Russia. Ukraine first received shorter range version of ATACs in the fall of 2023. In the spring of 2024, the U.S. began supplying upgraded models, and at the time, Kiev was permitted to deploy these missiles against target and occupy Ukrainian territory. So these missiles were only meant to hit inside Ukraine territory, where you have the Russians and their tanks and stuff like that. It was not meant to hit Russia territory country. Now, Joe said that. I remember Joe said, we're not going to be hitting Russia territory. We're not going to be doing that. You guys already know, Joe knows is longer than Pinocchio. All right, so we're going to go with the next one. That is one of the big breaking news there. They fired ATACs. Now we're going to go with this next news. This is happening right now. You have certain city in Ukraine, dark. Power grid was destroyed. They're trying to fix that. They're trying to get it up and running. But man, this is what happens when you have these biblical wars. Ukraine may face rolling power outages throughout the entire winter. As the Russian strike continued to degrade the country's electricity system and force increasingly severe consumption limits. Now it says here, the biblical war continues. We must prepare for the worst case scenario. Santiago said that Ukraine is losing generation capacity almost every 10 days, while Russia shows no signs of reducing strike on energy facilities. At the same time, Ukraine's overall electricity consumption has fallen by around 30% since the start of the full-scale invasion. But generation losses are much higher, creating a widening gap that leaves the system vulnerable. The country must therefore brace for further volatility. Now, if the bear Russia had not resumed massive strikes, we could even have exported electricity this winter. But with strikes intensifying again since autumn, the war continues, and we have to prepare for different scenarios. So again, it just, there's no power grid now. There's power failure. This is why we tell a lot of people to start prepping, because stuff like this, we need to do our homework, because eventually it will happen here. We will see foreign planes in sleeping giant atmosphere dropping their stuff and going after our grid and oil facility. So it's very important that sleeping giant pay very close attention and always prepare spiritually, physically, and mentally. This is why it's always important to stock up on candles or even a generator. Crane's energy system entered the heating season in better technical shape than a year ago, he noted. Thanks to months of repairs, equipment replacement, and large stockpiles of spare parts built with the help of international partners. Yet the decisive factor remains Moscow's targeting of critical infrastructure, the timing and scale of which cannot be predicted. The bear may try to split the grid in half. Ooh. Once again, you have Okranagol does not rule out that Russia will try to divide Ukraine's power system geographically by knocking out east-west transmission link. Santiago said that such a split already happened in 2023 after a major Russian assault. Now the occupiers are again trying to divide our system to shut it down. This is the enemy's main goal, he said, adding that repair teams are working around the clock to prevent such an outcome. Now it says here, to shield critical site, Ukraine is building a comprehensive 2+ protection system that combines traditional first level defenses such as gabions, reinforced concrete shelters for auto transformers, new underground bunkers to protect control rooms, and relay equipment. And one thing I tell you guys, Ukraine made a lot of stuff that was donated to them, a lot of money, and still just a lot of money going towards them. This biblical war needs to end. The problem is, you guys, Zelensky is extending the martial law, keeping him in power for another 6 months or a year. As long as Zelensky is still president, it just, things are not going to change. Then again, there needs to be a new face, a new key player. The shift underground was necessary, Santiago explained, because Russian forces have adopted their tactics. Early war horizontal drone attack have been replaced with vertical strikes targeting weak points from above. Once again, about half of Ukrainian transformer fleet is now protected by second-level concrete structures. The rest will be reinforced in the first half of 2026. These structures have already proven effective, he said, noting that several units survive multiple direct drone hits. Still, no defense can offer 100% protection. The capital, Kiev, has faced intense outages, but Zanchenko stressed that Kiev is in the same situation as other regions, apart from frontline and border areas where the damage is more severe. Some western regions have fared better simply because attack hit transmission assist elsewhere, forcing energy flows to reroute through limited capacity corridors. Now, Ukraine's grid was never designed to move vast amounts of power from west to east across hundreds of kilometers, he said. As a result, bottlenecks force some regions to impose cuts, even while others have surplus capacity. Give me a second here, guys. There's a lot more information here. I'm just going to skip some of them, but imports increase, but not always usable. We were sending some stuff to fix their grid, and Joe was going to send our transformer to them, which they say could take up to a year to reach Ukraine, which it was quickly denied because it's our transformer. We need light. But again, it's not looking good. It's absolutely not looking good for Ukraine. Distributed generation helps, but not enough. A lot of this stuff here I'm just going to skip, guys. Nuclear expansion plan face economic limits. It says here, Ukraine has discussed plans for up to 9 new nuclear reactors, but Zanchenko cautioned that such an expansion is unrealistic. 9 blocks is probably too much, he said, explaining that utilization rates will fall to around 50%, making the project economically non-viable. Once again, you have Oreknego believes Ukraine instead needs a balanced mix of. Give me a second here. Let me just remove these advertisements. Here we go. Modernized thermal generation, new base load capacity to replace the occupied Zaporizhzhia plant energy storage system. So how long will the outages last? Zanchenko said the duration of rolling blackout depend entirely on Russian strikes intensity and the speed of repairs. Changes can be negative or positive, he said. Everyone is working on restoring facility. It is only a matter of time. Asked whether outages could last the whole winter, he replied, potentially, this is possible. The war is not over. He added, a practical reminder familiar to many Ukrainians. Europeans have done this for decades. They save energy. We must do the same. And that's all of it there. So once again, blackouts may last all winter. As Ukraine power generation loses, overtake 30% decline in consumption, with Russia intensifying precision strikes on critical infrastructure. Ukraine grid operators warn that even more expanded imports may not offset the accelerating damage. So you could send all these stuff, all these things. It's going to take a long time to get those power generators back on, meaning that you have a lot of people out there using candles. And at the same time, Ukraine just fired US ATAC. I don't think it was long range. I truly apologize. I mentioned long range. But again, Ukraine just fired ATACs. So we are definitely seeing that this war is not ending. And only God knows when these two countries will make peace. But right now, there's no sign of peace. There's no sign of ending. At the very end, it's the innocents that's struggling. Struggling out there with the blackouts, millions. Americans are struggling when it comes to gov shutdown situation. At the very end, those in the spotlights is really causing all this headache throughout the entire world. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, and share. Till next time later. Peace.